Okay guys, so today I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go over some examples of the mask. I am going to point out some examples of the conceptual requirements in the mask. I am going to point out visual opposition because that shows up in the rubric and we haven't talked about that a lot in class. And then I'm going to point out some design principles because we always need review of design principles. As far as conceptual requirements, when you think about the mask, I want you to think about what are my positive metaphors representing a hopeful future for me? And then what are my negative metaphors, right? If you have both of these, that's going to help with kind of like visual opposition. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to discuss real quickly what I think those metaphors might represent. And then when I talk about visual opposition, we're going to look for conflict, right? So how do we show conflict in the mask? Well, we show them by putting the negative and the positive next to each other, right? Two opposites, red and green. That in itself, that creates sort of like a conflict and a visual tension that represents a change, right? And it is the change in yourself that represents your promise, right? So by having visual opposition and by having conflict, having opposites next to each other, you're showing your promise. And you really want to go ahead and do that. So you need to have the negative and the positive next to each other. I'm going to point that out right now. And then these are some design principles that I'll review when talking unity, focal points, and movement. So let's go ahead. Let's get started. Let's look at some, let's see here, where are they? Let's look at some past mask examples. So here are some past masks that we go ahead and we have. And to just think about these different examples, let's start by looking at obvious visual opposition, right? Right here. Ooh, that's a little big. Right here, zigzag down the middle, right? We have two opposites happening right here, okay? We have a warm color versus a cool color. So by using opposite colors, you are creating visual opposition, right? Other quick examples of visual opposition: sad, happy. Like that's a positive, frequent thing that we see, right? Okay, let's see. What else can we find as far as opposites, visual opposition? So this year, the broken scar down the middle, which can be a metaphor, right? Creates visual opposition. More examples of visual opposition, right? We have two different kinds of textures. We have rough texture right here. And we have smooth texture. So those are opposites, right? Like one side's rough, one side is smooth. Other examples of visual opposition. I mean, there's nothing like blood to create some opposition and some conflict, right? So when there's a change in your mask, that is kind of like visual opposition right there, okay? Other examples of visual opposition that I'm finding. I mean, right here, you know what's really startling with this one is we have light and dark values. Light and dark values creates opposites, right? So you want to have that tension. You want to go ahead and you want to have that conflict, and that tension kind of shows the change. Let's see, what else do we got? I'm going to click done. Oh my gosh. Done. Delete. Okay. But let's go ahead. Let's see what other examples we can find with visual opposition. Okay. So, this is a color draft, right? And yours is actually going to end up being a draft. But this is a great example of visual opposition. Where did it go? Okay. There's great visual opposition here. Okay, you may be looking at this being like, well, I don't know, mine's not going to look this nice. But I believe in you, okay? Right here is visual opposition, okay? We have light versus dark, right? That creates tension, okay? So the light could represent truth outside of the cave. And right here, this side could represent ignorance. My kids are screaming upstairs. Sorry, guys. Okay, so that creates visual opposition. So opposites creates conflict. Okay, then we have sight versus being blind. So this person chose to not have an eye. Usually we see, what do we see a lot of? We see a lot of blindfolds as well, right? But that creates visual opposition, right? Opposites. We have two different eyebrows, right? Happening, right? So this is opposite right there. Right? We have truth. Oh, it even says it. Can you have words? Yes, you can have words. Okay, but you could see that we have like darker values, dark versus light. That's the like best example of visual opposition. The sun represents truth, right? So the sun outside of the cave represents truth, sun, and then we have kind of like the devil, representing kind of like, ignorance and not knowing. So there's plenty of visual opposition in here. While we're here, we could kind of start to talk about metaphors just before we leave this one. So what are metaphors and symbols, right? Something I see really common is horns representing evil, right? So that's something you could include on your mask. I see a lot of eyelashes, right? Eyelashes representing fake beauty or fake beauty standards. I'm not sure if that's what it represents here, but just talking about metaphors. The sun represents truth. Blindness, right? Being blind. Blind or blindfolds could represent ignorance. Okay, and there's all sorts of things here. We got blood, right? Blood and scars are a common one. Blood, scars. It's a very common metaphor that we see. That would be a negative, right? So, like, negative metaphors. Negative or sad. We got the tear. The tear representing sadness. It's very common. Almost every mask has tears. But I mean, why? Because it's a common human experience, right? So totally, tears could be one of your metaphor. Look, we got this flower. Maybe the flower represents hope. Flower equals hope. Right, so we have all sorts of metaphors and symbolism right here. And we obviously, like we said before, we have a lot of visual opposition. Is this balanced? I could go ahead and I could talk about principles of design, right? Is it balanced? Yes. So it is balanced. We have like a lot of stuff happening on this side. We have the horn, which is big and heavy, but it balances all of the sun right here. So that's what we would call balance, right? That's actually a principle of design. Is it unified? I would say it's unified. It seems connected. I don't know if I see a lot of repetition, but I see a limited color palette with the brown. But there's a lot of beautiful stuff happening on this side of the mask. We have the eye right here. And then in order to balance that, we have a lot of different metaphors, a lot of different focal points on that side. So a lot of good stuff happening right there, a lot of visual opposition. Let's see what else we could talk about. Okay, we have a new mask design. So some mask designs are kind of coming in. And there are just great things coming in that I'm finding in my Google Drive. So thanks for turning those in. I believe this is Geraldine. So a really popular metaphor that we're going to see in these masks are scars or wounds, right? Representing kind of like, obviously, representing pain. You can totally have words, right? So words can be metaphor. Words are good. We have the zipper over the mouth, right? Zipper representing silence, right? The flowers can represent beauty. I would love to know what these represent right here. Obviously, there's something here, and she'll talk about it in her promise. I love these colors. I think this is a flag, maybe representing culture, flag. And then obviously we have a lot going on with these spikes, leaves. So there are a lot of beautiful metaphors. Is it balanced? Totally. Okay, if you go down the middle, it's pretty easy for something to be balanced if it's a face, because you're going to have an even amount of things on both sides. But, you know, like looking right here at this scar right here, well, there's this open wound right here that kind of balances it out. We got the tear. Let's talk about visual opposition, which is conflict and like putting opposites kind of strategically next to each other, which we've been talking about. So we go right here to these spikes, right? This is very harsh, right? Just these like sharp edges communicate like conflict to me. But then sort of in the background, we have this smoother texture with the flag, right? So we have these jaggedy edges and then this smoothness in the background. So it's very much like we have sharp and then we have curved, right? So sharp versus curve creates conflict, right? So there's total conflict there. There's a lot going on. Obviously we have open versus close versus open. So that's really great. We have complementary colors happening with the orange and the blue, right? That creates visual opposition. So you guys may be like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to do everything in this rubric, but you'd be surprised. You could really do, a lot, you know, and not even know it. Looking for more visual opposition, looking for more metaphors, kind of thinking about balance. So here's a great set of masks happening all over this page. It's just like beautiful. And, you know, we could talk about, I would say that these are really a great example of kind of like visual balance. So all of these masks, I would say, are very balanced. Right? If you were to draw a line of symmetry down the middle, yes, this is really heavy right here. We have a lot going on, but then we have bright colors, right? Bright colors to balance it out. So there aren't bright colors here, but we have the bright colors here. Totally balanced. You could see the different metaphors all over here, like metaphor, positive and negative, right? This is really, really beautiful, like metaphors, like representing being blind, right? Blind, and also not hearing. What do we call that? Deaf. So being blind to the truth, not hearing what people are telling you. Those are things that you could leave behind. Being silent, right? So, and this is just such a glorious mask too, because the repetition of the red X's creates unity, right? So this is very unified, right? It all works together because it's repeating. We have a red X, we have a red X, we have a red X, that brings the entire piece kind of together. So really, really good. This is great. So this person's no longer going to let people keep her silent, right? We got the hands over. And that's really heavy. I remember when she was building these hands, it took a lot of work, but it's visually balanced with these eyes, right? So if the line of symmetry were right there, we could see both sides. All of these are kind of like this is balanced, right? So we got the sun on one side, and we have all this bright color, but then we have this giant horn on this side. and we have repetition of, you know, like we have the black lines right here, but the black lines repeat themselves right here. We have opposites, right? We have positive metaphors with the flowers, right? And then we have the negative metaphors with the scars, right? So we got a lot of metaphors happening here. You know, look at this, like so beautiful, like puzzles, trying to find the missing piece. I mean, I can't even, like, this is just gorgeous, right? But talk about a metaphor. So you could have something kind of like in the middle, between your eyes. You could have things hanging off the side. Again, sadly, you're drawing all of this, but it provides, you know, more opportunities. Negative metaphor, we got chains and a lock. We have a devil tail, right? There's just so many things. So a huge thing that we're doing today, we have zippers, we have messages, is we're just like, we're starting to draw those metaphors and getting into the pastels. Look, we have our line of symmetry. We have balance on each side. You can have one side be hopeful and one side be painful, right? And this is your past, right? And this is your future. This is the hope of the future, right? Flowers. And then you're traveling just by having the future versus the past. That's creating visual opposition. And that's what tells your story. That's what tells your promise. So just so much stuff happening. Wow, this is gorgeous. Look at that. Like all that pain going across. We got repetition that's helping to unify it. When we're talking about movement, moving the eye around the mask, by you repeating stuff, like this is a focal point. This is a focal point that moves the eye aside. Oh, look at this beautiful flag up at the top. This is like kind of like so gorgeous. But you, like, this is a focal point that moves the eye through, and then we see this pattern right here down there. Totally gorgeous. So make sure you repeat things, and that moves the eye through. If I could give any sort of criticism to this, I would say that my eye goes right here, and my eye's not going down here. So what bright colors could we have down there to balance it? But it's so perfect, right? Okay, so obviously past versus the future, right? So this is hopeful, and then this is the past. So I really hope you guys have a good time doing this. I hope that this helped to explain the visual opposition and the principles and the balance and the positive and negative metaphors. I mean, look at the repetition. Just repeating lines, you know, similar lines, similar textures. Repeating things helps to make it unified. This one's a little plain. I would say this one needs some more metaphors, but you know, it's powerful, right? But notice how like having more metaphors, look, our eyes move around this piece because of the repetition of these different lines. So decorating your mask with lines really helps. So this whole week you're doing sketches, you're drawing metaphors. I hope this helped you kind of like think of different ideas. I would just say, do we talk about all of them? These are some from last year. Wait, where did it go? Right? I already talked about this, but I don't know if I talked about these. Putting things over the eyes, have creative mouths. Really think about creative ways. Like if you're silenced and your mouth is covered, think of creative ways to show that pain, just so your mask is different. Like how can you make yours different? And unique. So just kind of like keep that in mind too. I mean, talk about different and unique. Talk about unity. Repeating these like horns again and again helps it to stay balanced and come together. So I hope you have a good time making this mask, and I hope this helped you understand the rubric more, metaphors, visual opposition, how you can unify your mask by repeating the same thing again or having a limited color palette, right? This has a lot of blue. That brings it together. This has a lot of green. That brings it together. Is this one unified? I don't know. Maybe because we repeat the eyebrows. This one's definitely unified because we're repeating the orange. And we have these lines that move it around the page that bring it together. Oh, look. Talk about a metaphor. Open up your eyes. See the truth. We have a magnifying glass. So, and then we're building a future. I just can't talk about how great these masks are. I can't wait to see your masks. Namaste, guys. Good luck. May you be happy and healthy.